Well, when you look at what's happening in the rest of the world, for example, the Israel and Hamas conflict, I believe that Israel just bombed like some buildings in Qatar because there were some Hamas leaders there.
Yeah.
Everyone's in an uproar. Oh, how could they do this? It's a whole different country. And I'm thinking, like, we did it with bin Laden. We went to Pakistan and killed bin Laden on foreign soil. When you look at the Israel-Hamas conflict, do you see this ending anytime soon?
All right. Again, I've got a story for everything. You remember Yasser Arafat?
Yes.
Yasser Arafat was the worst guy in the world, right?
Well, yeah, the leader of the PLO.
He was the leader of the PLO. There was a time when the United States government designated him the #1 terrorist in the world. I know that because I was in a meeting when we talked about 66 organization. Yasser Arafat, for a time, as head of the PLO, was the #1 guy in the world, right? Pictures to prove that I've been to PLO headquarters in Gaza, standing 2 feet away from Yasser Arafat with an MP5K under my suit coat pocket with a 30-round magazine. And I could have, like 2 months before that, I could have greased him and gotten an incentive award and been an international hero.
Well, you could have killed him, but you wouldn't have gotten away.
Oh, yeah.
You would have gotten away.
Let me tell you about just perspective. That's a great question.
With the amount of security he had around him, you could have killed him and gotten away.
That's what you think watching TV, right? Here's the reality of it. I go in, I'm not going to talk about the construct of how I went in, but literally go in from, I've worked with Mossad, Shin Bet. I've worked with the Israelis since 1991. What's that, 35 years? Mm-hmm. Before, during, and after. Extensively. At that time, I went from Israel into Gaza and ended up at PLO headquarters in Gaza, which it looked like Santa Monica. No, it looked like Malibu, right? There's a beach house on the sand. I go in, I've got a suit on and an MP5K, which for people is a 9mm submachine gun, fully automatic. It's about this long, right? And I go in, and when I work with the Israelis, I'm a big fan of Israel, big fan of Israel. I've worked with them in a lot of different circumstances. I'm not making a value judgment. I'm just saying I've always had good relationship with their intelligence community, okay? To put it in context. There was always a standoff. We're watching them, they're watching us. When I went into Gaza, it was like old home week. I pull into PLO headquarters. Yasser Arafat was not there yet. I go in, and his director of security at the time was wearing Vietnam-era green BDU, like camouflage pants from the Vietnam War. And he had on white Florsheim patent leather zipper boots. And he had a matching belt that said Marlboro across the back of it. And he was carrying an he was carrying an AK-47 carbine by the pistol stock with his finger on the trigger. And we're sitting there having tea, and I look in the back, and there's a volleyball court in the sand, like sliding glass to go into the Med. And he said, no, don't go out there. It's a minefield. So you're in a house, you're in Malibu, right? I mean, just white sandy beach, volleyball court, that's a minefield. You're in this house on a nice couch having tea, and all of a sudden, two guys go walking by with hefty garbage bags, and I go to this guy with a Marlboro belt and say, what's in the garbage bags? What's that all about? They had no currency, so they had to use US dollars, and they had no credit, so they had to take cash. And he never slept any place 2 nights in a row. So they would carry hefty garbage bags full of cash with his director of security, who had white patent leather boots and a Marlboro belt. It's not what you think. It's not what the media make these things out to be. It's often far, far more evolved. And then Yasser pulls up. He pulls up in a 600 series Mercedes limousine type car with the AMG package, gold hubcaps, a flag on each bumper, and it's got a Dukes of Hazzard airfoil on the trunk.
Okay.
And I go, what? I mean, it's not like, it's so much, that world is so much more human than we're led to believe.
Well, what were you even doing there?
I was just there.
You don't want to say?
No.
Okay.
But I'm saying, we all think these things. You know, this thing that bin Laden was running this global terrorism network with this boardroom, whatever. He was living in a cave. You know, he ended up getting killed in a house where he'd spent years and years and years living in a room where he couldn't even look out, see the sun. We build these constructs.
He was walking around the outside.
He was. My
His
point in the
backyard,
story
basically,
is
but that's it.
that, I used to go on television and I would say, right after 9/11, and I tried to be the voice of reason. I'd say, look, they're not coming back. They're not. The FBI changed its organization just because of terrorism. They changed the entire organization. The U.S. government changed the entire world as a result of 9/11. How many attacks were there? How many investigations? How many prosecutions? How many follow-ons? More or less zero.
Yeah.
In all of those years. So I think what I'm trying to say in talking about all of this is I've lived a life where I have gone out and been in the middle of everything from Harold Janine and the CIA interface with private industry and a guy that worked for my dad shooting the number 2 guy in the FBI, through Ruby Ridge and through Waco and through the war on terror in Guantanamo Bay and Afghanistan and Iraq and 30 countries, working with all these intelligence agencies, PLO headquarters, and name it. I mean, the list, it goes on and on. What I'm trying to say is the reality, and what I'd like people to know is, it's so much smaller than you think it is. Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House of Representatives when I was a speechwriter. I was a speechwriter in Washington, D.C. when I first went in. And he said, all politics is local. And I would say everything is local. That what happens in the world looks different on CNN or on whatever the online streaming service is now. The world's changed so fast.
I mean,
It's not like you think.
There's still a bunch of hostages, Israeli hostages, and I think some American hostages also.
Yes.
That Hamas has. Do you think these hostages are going to be returned at some point, or do you think this is going to keep dragging out because
I think
Israel's looking bad and being accused of genocide because of all the bombings and so forth?
I have no personal knowledge of hostages alive or dead. I don't know.
Yeah.
All I say is I look at the larger construct and say, if you were a political organization, Hamas, somehow responsible for the people in Gaza, and you had a chip that you could use with the Israelis to try to make that go away, it seems like they would. I mean, the Israelis have killed everybody. Everybody. So it seems to me that if Hamas still had hostages and they could negotiate something with the Israelis, they have, it seems like they would. So I don't have great optimism for people that we believe are still hostages.
How do you think the whole Russia-Ukraine thing went?
Okay, again, I spent a lot of time in Ukraine. I spent a lot of time with White Wolf prior to the war breaking out.
White Wolf?
Is that
Who was that?
the Ukrainian entity, war entity?
Okay.
Yeah, you can Google it.
Yeah, about to.
Yeah, you're right. But I spent a lot of time in Ukraine, specifically Kiev, in the years leading up to the war, and I'm shocked, absolutely shocked. It's lasted this long.
Yeah, me too.
Shocked. So, what specific questions do you have about it?
Like, the U.S. government has basically been keeping this war going by sending weapons to Ukraine. You take away U.S. funding, Ukraine will fall.
Yes,
And I'm from Ukraine. I was born in Kiev.
I know.
So I thought it was going to be over a long time ago. I never thought they really had any chance. But it's dragging on how many years now?
3.
Like 3-4 years? It's like, how much more money can you send them? You're completely outnumbered, outgunned. There's way more money. Russia can keep this going forever. So I just don't really understand the point of it anymore.
I don't either. I'll reference a conversation I had with a guy, one of my guys, in Ukraine. We were having dinner, and he had been Spetsnaz, Russian. And he came back to Ukraine, and he was fighting what at the time was the thought in the early years was that coming from the Donbass was coming into Ukraine. The Russians were trying to build a larger intelligence network because it's ethnically Russian. Everybody speaks Russian, right? And he was talking about it, and he said, well, we're Cossacks. And I said, I did not know that. And he said, ethnically, the Cossacks, one of the great war-fighting cultures in the history of the world, or one of the most prolific in the history of the world, are Ukrainians. And I look back now wondering how the war has lasted as long as it has, and I think that's a big part of it. I think culturally, they are different than we understand. So yes, the money, the guns, all of the weaponry used to prolong the war, that has come from the United States and from NATO countries for various strategic reasons that I have no say in. But they are an extraordinarily robust and warring mentality. That does not surprise me.
Well, Christopher Whitcomb, quite a story, quite a life. And, thank you for your... I can't really say thank you for your service because you're not really military.
No.
But you're almost like a paramilitary.
I've been in a lot of wars, but...
A lot of wars.
Yeah, I don't stand up on Veterans Day.
No, absolutely not. But you definitely contributed to, a lot of disasters being averted.
Yes, I have.
And, I definitely appreciate it. And, just thank you so much for sharing your story, man. Wish you all the best.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
That's what it is. Till next time. Peace.